Imagine this, a moment of raw honesty, a whispered confession shared in confidence, a simple opinion offered without much thought. Now picture that same thought, those very words, returning to you weeks, months, or even years later, not as a shared memory but as a weapon, sharpened, twisted, aimed directly at your vulnerabilities. Wasn't it you who said that? The question hangs in the air, heavy with implication, turning your own past self against your present. How many times has the echo of your voice become the ammunition used by another? We live in a world drowning in noise. Everyone seems desperate to speak, to fill the silence, to broadcast their existence, their justifications, their fleeting opinions. We equate visibility with value, loudness with confidence, constant communication with connection. Yet, have you ever felt the undeniable gravity of someone who enters a room and commands attention without saying a word? Their presence is a quiet force, a magnetic field that rearranges the dynamics around them. It's not luck, it's not coincidence. As Sun Tzu whispered across centuries, true power often lies not in the overt, but in the unseen. Be extremely subtle, to the point of invisibility. Be extremely mysterious, to the point of silence. Thus, you will be able to determine the fate of your enemies. But what is this subtle force? Why does silence hold such unsettling power? And how is it wielded by those who truly understand the intricate dance of human interaction? Where does real influence reside? In the clamor of the crowd, or in the deliberate quiet of the observer? Why this frantic need to fill every pause, to explain every action, to justify every thought before it's even fully formed? Perhaps it stems from a deep-seated insecurity, a fear articulated by thinkers like Arthur Schopenhauer, who saw the incessant chatter of society as a way to avoid confronting the emptiness within. We speak to prove we exist, to feel validated, to distract ourselves from the unsettling quiet where uncomfortable truths might surface. Jean-Paul Sartre spoke of the look of the other, that external gaze which can turn us into objects, solidifying our identity in ways we might not choose. Is our compulsive need to speak, then, a desperate attempt to control that narrative, to define ourselves before others do? We project confidence through a barrage of words, hoping to mask the very anxieties that fuel the outpouring. Yet, in this flood of self-expression, we often reveal more than we intend. We betray our triggers, our weaknesses, the very fault lines an astute observer can trace. The truly powerful, the natural strategists, akin to those Machiavelli observed in the courts of power, understand this dynamic. They resist the urge to react impulsively. They remain silent, not out of emptiness, but out of fullness, a fullness of observation, of patience, of strategic intent. They listen beneath the words, perceiving the subtle dissonances, the hesitations, the unspoken desires and fears that paint a far truer picture than any carefully constructed sentence. They understand that knowledge isn't just gathered from what is said, but profoundly from what is withheld. The consequences of this imbalance ripple through our lives, often unnoticed until it's too late. When you speak too freely, when your reactions are immediate and unfiltered, you become predictable. Your emotional landscape is laid bare, an open book for anyone skilled enough to read it. In negotiations, the one who reveals their desperation first loses leverage. In relationships, the partner who constantly vents their insecurities without measure may inadvertently push the other away. In leadership, the figure who cannot control their impulsive responses undermines their own authority. As neuroscience reveals, our brains are wired to pick up on micro-expressions, subtle shifts in body language, fleeting changes in vocal tone, data points that often contradict spoken words. The silent observer gathers this data dispassionately, piecing together the hidden truths, while the talker remains oblivious, trapped in their own narrative. This information asymmetry is the bedrock of manipulation. Those who observe without revealing can shape perceptions, exploit weaknesses, and guide outcomes, all while appearing neutral or even supportive. You might feel understood, but are you merely being read? This constant and often unconscious self-exposure leaves you vulnerable, a pawn in games you don't even realize are being played. The unseen trap tightens with every unthinking word, every impulsive reaction, solidifying patterns of behavior that others can easily anticipate and exploit. How much of your life is dictated not by your choices, but by the predictable reactions others have learned to elicit from you? But what if this dynamic could be reversed? What if silence wasn't merely a void to be feared, but a space to be claimed, a weapon to be wielded? Imagine reclaiming that power, shifting from being the observed to the observer. This isn't about becoming manipulative in the nefarious sense, but about cultivating the self-awareness and strategic patience championed by thinkers from Sun Tzu to Machiavelli. It begins with rebellion against the impulse. Instead of rushing to fill the silence in a conversation, hold it. Feel the discomfort, yours and theirs, and observe what emerges in that space. Instead of reacting immediately to provocation, pause, breathe. Consider the intention behind the attack. Is the goal to elicit a specific response, to throw you off balance? Refuse to play their game. This requires discipline, a conscious choice to step back from the emotional fray. Train your observation skills daily. Look beyond the surface. Notice the fleeting expression that contradicts the smile, the feet pointing towards the exit during a promise of support, the tension in the shoulders betraying a facade of calm. Crucially, turn this observation inward. What are your triggers? When do you feel the urge to over-explain or react defensively? Understanding your own emotional vulnerabilities is the first step to preventing others from exploiting them. Silence, used intentionally, becomes an active strategy. It creates mystery, forcing others to project their own assumptions and anxieties onto you. It disrupts expectations, destabilizes opponents, and gives you the invaluable gift of time. Time to think, to plan, to choose your response, rather than having it dictated by instinct or external pressure. This is the beginning of mastering the unseen forces that shape interaction. The ultimate truth, however, lies deeper than mere strategic silence. It resides in mastering the power of absence, the profound influence of emptiness itself. Machiavelli understood that power wasn't just about action, but about the perception of action, the careful calibration of presence and withdrawal. A leader who is always available, always explaining, becomes commonplace, their presence taken for granted. But a leader who withdraws strategically, whose appearances are calculated, cultivates an aura of mystique and importance. Their absence speaks volumes, creating a vacuum that others rush to fill with speculation, desire, and even fear. This is the strategy of emptiness. When you deny someone the expected reaction, the closure their psyche craves, you force them into a state of uncertainty. They question themselves, project their own insecurities onto the silence, and often concede ground without realizing why. Think of the friend who disappears from social media. Suddenly, everyone wonders where they are, their value amplified by their absence. Think of the negotiator who doesn't immediately counter an offer, letting the silence pressure the other side into revealing more. This isn't passivity. It's a sophisticated form of control, built not on words, but on the deliberate manipulation of expectation and psychological need. Mastering this requires profound self-control. It means learning to withstand the discomfort of emptiness, both your own and that which you impose on others. It's understanding, as Sun Tzu taught, that sometimes the greatest victory is won by not fighting directly, by letting the opponent exhaust themselves against your deliberate inaction. Silence is not neutral. It can be a tool of profound strategy or cruel domination. Knowing when to employ it and when to break it, when to withdraw and when to reappear, separates the masters of influence from those controlled by the world's noise. This mastery strengthens not just your strategic position, but your inner self, forging a core of calm resilience amidst the chaos. Those who cannot master their own silence become prisoners of the world's incessant demands. But those who embrace the power of the pause, who learn to navigate the depths of emptiness, discover a source of influence more potent than any spoken word. They change how others perceive them, and more importantly, they transform how they perceive themselves. The path is demanding, requiring discipline few are willing to cultivate. But within that silence lies the key to true agency, the quiet strength that shapes reality.